And so to your point, you really want to make sure that you're working with the right people and figuring out, like, is this the safe partner that I need? Because now you've seen it with businesses and opportunities where you can invest into things. Every real estate investment or oil and gas or small business that you park money into, it's running a business and it counts on people. And you mentioned the 25-year-old earlier that points to the finance model. All that stuff is crap. Like, you need to know who's running the show today and that they'll be there tomorrow. And you're partnering with somebody that you have to really know is going to be there for that, because stuff will go wrong and things will fail. And you need to know that this person's going to be in the trenches with you if, for the future of that partnership, because it is a partnership. You're bringing money as a silent investor, but there are expectations and roles established, because passive investing doesn't mean it's passive for everybody. Somebody is very, very active behind the scenes, and you have to trust that person's working in your best interest.
I love that. So a mental model that I want to share with our audience that I just came up with this year is, if somebody hasn't done something really hard for 10 years, I'm probably not going to work with them. Like you saying, hey, I've been in the dry cleaning business for 14 years. What that tells me is you've had a lot of really bad days and you still showed up and you made it successful.
Welcome to the Exceptional Companies Podcast, a podcast for purpose-led entrepreneurs looking to master the art of buying, selling, or optimizing small businesses. Your host, Chris Seegers, founder of Exceptional Companies and author of Selling Main Street, has over a decade of experience starting, buying, and leading successful businesses. He's here to guide you through the complex world of business transactions and growth. Each week, we dive deep with actionable insights, expert interviews, and real-world strategies to activate and equip you to live exceptionally and build exceptional businesses. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Here's your host, Chris Seegers.
Welcome to the Exceptional Companies Podcast, where we discuss how to buy, grow, and eventually exit your business. I'm your host, Chris Seegers, and I'm joined by a really fascinating guest, Ian Noble. Ian is the founder of RunSteady Investments. He's had an exit that was successful. And then as he thought through, how do I place my capital into something that's going to continue to grow value, he started RunSteady. So Ian, welcome to the show, man. Super excited to dig into it.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, for sure. So we always start with just a background, a little bit of story to get our audience oriented on who you are and what you're about.
Great. Well, I live in Austin, and I'm a second generation dry cleaner, and that was my identity for so many years. So my dad had a dry cleaner that he started in the 80s. And after going to school, the plan was never to get into the family business, but we have a small family and it's just my sister and I. And he approached me right after I got out of college and said, give it a shot. He wasn't going to work anymore, and let's see what you can do. So I went that route instead of the corporate route, and I'm glad I did, never looked back, and just been a small business guy my whole life. So that business eventually, as you mentioned, I was able to sell it and get out of the industry, but I love all things small business entrepreneurship. And then now I apply that with some real estate overlay and, what was the next chapter after selling my business. So hopefully I can bring some value to your listeners to help them if they're going through the same journey.
I love that, man. So let's dig into that, because the baby boomer transition is real. It's big. It's happening fast. And so talk to us a little bit about just the relationship with your family and your dad as you grew that business. We're in a family office. We're in business with 5 of my siblings, and there's really amazing things about it and there's really tough things about it. So tell us a little bit about that journey of that transition.
Yeah, so the number one, working with family is complicated. My dad, he had started it, but then got burnt out from the business. And when he stepped away, there was a team that was running it. And so when I got involved in the business, I wasn't working day to day with him. And my dad's one of my best friends, and so I teased him. I said, I would have fired you if we worked together. And you work with your siblings, it can be difficult because they're, one side of you knows that they're family, the other side of you knows that you need to run your business well. And so for me, it worked out in our scenario, having a family business. Second generation, historically, our failures. So fortunate I was able to, to overcome that failing statistic. But we, again, on the day-to-day stuff, we never worked together. And you know, along the way, I was that bad guy that if family had asked for a job, if they weren't qualified for it, the answer was no. But you know, you'd rather face that stuff up front. And I know so many people listening may have family business or second generation. You understand, and I'm sure everyone has a story of like, yeah, I got that one family member that's in the business that we should fire, but we can't, you know, and at the end of the day, this is your livelihood and what you work for. And so you need to make sure that you're equipped with the best team. And so I have a lot of respect for families that do and can do that, because you know, you have the loyalty and the trust factor built in already, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit about just scaling that and some of the tools or resources that were super helpful along your journey. Because it's tough, man. Whether you're in the business or working on the business, it's hard to grow consistently. You're fighting a lot of different battles on the legal side, on the marketing side, on the ops side, on the employee side. So share a few stories or just some things that were useful along that.
You know, getting the business back into order for what it needed to be was the first order of business. You know, you mentioned red tape and some of the obstacles that small business owners face. And it's funny because when you have this discussion, so much of it, you think about what your end product is. In this case, we cleaned dirty clothes. But for any business, the red tape and all the administrative, legal, tax things, those are serious considerations that take up a lot of time. And so fortunately, over the years, it was just figuring out what the best systems were. I had a lot of failures along the way, a lot of eye-opening wake-up calls with like misclassifying employees, underinsuring things, and not having the right coverage. And it's funny because so much of your concentration is on your end product, but all the little things that are behind the scenes, those are what really make or break a business. So number one, it was just getting processes in place. The business was set up to where the foundation was good, but we had underperforming stores that were just left open for no reason. So I closed those, opened some new ones. We didn't have the dry clean industry was behind the curve for technology, so we didn't have a good point of sale system set up. There wasn't the customer service component wasn't there to the level it should be. So all of the little basics in a service business that needed to happen, that was what the 10, I was in it for 14 years. So that was the mission along the way.
That's awesome, man. And when you started thinking about exiting, give us a little bit of the insight on your headspace there. What was driving it? Was it exciting? Was it something that you're just like, hey, I got to get out of this space. It's just not working for me any longer. Tell us through that, because one of our core businesses is just helping people think through the business transition and ultimately selling their business. And there's not a lot of good educational resources out there. There's not a lot of good folks that have gone through it like you guys have, like we have, that can really say, hey, here's some of the landmines, here's some of the yellow, red flags that you should be aware of. Up to speed on that piece of the transition.
Entrepreneurship is really lonely. And, you know, the audience here, you all, if you're listening, you're in the same position. You come to a point, and my point specifically was there was an emotional, I guess, burden to where I was just kind of done with it. And I didn't know how to explain it. It had been 14 years and I felt that like I had reached this glass ceiling. And so for me, the business survived COVID. COVID was awful for our industry. I hear about a lot of industries that did really well. In Austin, Austin specifically for the state of Texas was more cautious than some of the other cities. And we lost 85% of business immediately. So that was a weird transition. I'd never worked harder in my life, even though we had no business. It was the strangest thing, but it was survival mode. And fortunately, good planning and putting reserves aside on autopilot were something that really saved me there. But there came a point to where I was no longer excited to win the best dry cleaners in Austin award. That's a big thing for small business in Austin. Or in many cities, right? There's a competition. You can't win trophies in business, but that you can. And there's some accolades in the city that I used to be really proud of winning. And then it just became an expectation, but it was also, I thought I was doing a disservice to the others. The others being the staff, and we had about 90 at this point, and also my family. So I love working. I was very much an owner-operator who worked in the business. It helped us meet or obtain the margins that I needed. But I was neglecting my family so much that My headspace was always about work. Everybody, even if you don't own a business, I think everyone goes through this with their career or whatever it may be. I would dream about it. I would sit across the dinner table and I would look at my kids, but I wasn't present mentally. And I got an email one day, and that email was, what the hell? Let me answer this email. It was a cold outreach. Let me buy your business. And that's what started the whole process. And I didn't know that if I could rewind the clock, I wouldn't have changed anything. I still would have exited the business, but I would have put a lot of systems in place to help prevent my burnout. And part of that was like too much of it was, I had built too much of it centered around me, or at least I thought so. Mm-hmm. So I found myself being the bottleneck, not giving enough authority to others. Because when I got in, I was 21. I didn't have business acumen at that point. I had hard work, and that was it. So learning to do these things along the way, I put myself in the center of all these processes, and I believe that helped attribute to my burnout because we're a low margin business, and it starts early. I was going to work in the dark. I was coming home in the dark and then thinking about it when I was sleeping. You all know the drill. It never ends. And that was my, light switch moment where I was having a hard time turning it back on and saying, I'm re-energized about this business. So it's time to pass the torch and let somebody with some new heart and fire come in, which was great, because this wasn't just a transaction to me. It was a family business. There's a legacy component to it. I needed to make sure that continued with the next person. And fortunately it did.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the key areas that we really help coach people on is delegating. And I've used a phrase that I'm like, as business owners, we always think we can control things, but really we can't control almost anything. So more involvement feels like we're controlling more, but oftentimes we aren't really controlling anything. So control is an illusion. It's just us understanding what we actually need to focus on and not. But it's really hard for any business owner, including me. I mean, I'm oftentimes a bottleneck to really understand what is a reasonable level of delegation that's useful for the business, that's useful for the family. And we've started asking this question because we do a lot of conferences and speaking and coaching. But I always ask folks, why did you get into the business? And ultimately it comes down to freedom of time, money, purpose, or relationship. One of those four is usually how it distills. And I always ask, are you enjoying the freedom that you deserve? And every one of them is like, no. It's usually a freedom of time thing, right? Yeah. But it might be a freedom of relationship where you're like, hey, I got into this to serve my family. And like you said, now I'm sitting at the table and I'm just thinking about that employee that just quit on me, instead of my son who's 9, who's like, hey, Dad, I just did this great thing at school and I totally missed it. So that's been something we've struggled with for sure, and it's tough. So okay, you sell this business and you have a successful exit, and then you're sitting at your house and you're thinking about what's next. How did you get into building RunSteady from there?
The transition went like this. When the business sold, I figured, okay, how am I going to make money outside of what I was doing? So when I sold, that was the question too, that there was some internal struggle. I don't think that I could have gone back at my age and made the money that I was making or taking from the business anywhere else. So it was very much, again, a lifestyle change to get out. When the business sold, the majority of it was at closing. And then there was a seller finance component that was there as well. But I first put all the proceeds into a money market account. It was earning 5.5% at the time. This is October of 2023. And I was looking at it and figured, okay, what's substantial enough for me to live going forward? I already had rental and real estate properties. And so getting into this business, the path that I chose, especially after selling the business, was real estate. Back in 2014, I started buying rentals, local in my market, single family homes. Graduated, got a duplex, graduated, got some commercial properties, small, triple net leased properties. So I was very, understanding of what real estate, the wealth that it could bring and the lifestyle that it could bring. And plus I watched my dad. That was part of the reason he stepped away so early. I could see that a lot of his income started coming from other sources and less of the business. And that was personal choice, right? He chose to step away from the business earlier than he may have should, but he was emotionally burnt out, and fortunately it all worked out. He didn't sell to somebody else, because when I bought that business from him, I think it was like a it was a big day for him because I think he was now making more money. I was 7 figures in debt. He was now making more money than he was, when he wasn't around the business. So it was a win-win. But back to your question, day one was, what do I do with this money after the exit? And money market was the answer. And then because we were already involved in real estate, my wife and I have Airbnbs, long-term rentals, et cetera. We were able to delegate her as the real estate professional, which gave us and unlocked some big tax opportunities.
Sure.
Or I'll say, so tax write-offs or to offset some of the income from that year, which was abnormal relative to the previous years. So passive income and investing in the world of real estate, but passively, was a new thing for me. And we talked a lot about, you mentioned control earlier. That was the hardest thing for me. I controlled my business. I feel like I had a pulse on everything. I also controlled my rentals here in Austin, and I didn't have any partners in anything. And that was difficult, making that transition to, in the passive space, you're giving your trust to somebody else, and you hope that they're good stewards of your money. And so that was number one. That was the obstacle that I faced, but I needed a tax write-off that year. And so I went relatively heavy in that space. I was able to take advantage of depreciation, which for many of y'all that if you're not, up to date on depreciation in real estate, you can do what's called a cost segregation study. The value of your investment or the property itself, excluding the land, you can accelerate the depreciation that's given to you over, it's 27 and a half years for your house, 39 years for commercial. You can basically front load that to the first year, and you can use it to offset your ordinary income if you have real estate professional status. So I started looking at this and I was like, wow, how much am I going to save year one? Not even focusing on the returns. You can save tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on your situation, for just by investing in real estate. And again, having that real estate professional status helped. Fast forward, I think having an identity crisis. I made these investments. The next 6 months, I was itching to get back and buy a business. And I said, this time I'm going to do it different. I'm going to partner up. I'm going to have mentors involved, partnership where they have equity stake, because I didn't have any of that. And I was used to just calling all the shots. And I realized that I put myself at a disadvantage over the years, perhaps from a growth perspective, by not doing that. But then my wife kept reminding me, and me as well, like, you got out of this for an emotional reason. It wasn't a money reason. So money's no longer and was not the motivating factor. It was, hey, you're kind of a slave to your business. And real estate helped me. I invested as a passive investor, and then I was just bored, and I thought, where's my identity? I think I had pride in knowing that I was that person that, local, and again, whatever your business is, the establishment was around for almost 40 years, and I think people knew the name. So I think a lot of that was.
Can we pause on that, Ian? Because
Yeah.
that is, as we coach clients, that is the number one deal killer for every business transaction, and no one ever talks about it. But a business owner transitioning out and establishing a new identity, literally, if I could say, hey, it's not a legal thing, it's not a terms thing, it's going to be, as the business owner's getting close to selling, so hey, we've got LOIs negotiated, now they're really thinking, oh shoot, in 90 days or less, I'm going to be out of this thing. I've seen they get really freaked out about the fact that my whole identity is I'm a successful business owner. I'm part of the chamber. I'm part of this networking group. I'm part of this. I give money to these causes through my business. And then they really get to a point where they're like, oh, I don't want to give that up. They know they need to, right? They know they should be running towards something, usually family or health or things that they need to focus on. But talk through that a little bit. Have you reinvented your identity into something different, or how'd you kind of start working through that? Because that one is, we've got a couple tools we've created to really help people think through that, but that has been the biggest struggle, I think, for every business owner thinking about selling is, who am I next?
Yeah, the identity crisis is real. I remember walking out of closing, and you want to be so excited, and I was, you take a big breath and you say, I did it, right? All this hard work. And then the next day when I didn't get up at 5 a.m. and go, get ready and have coffee and go to work, it was weird. You talk about identity and what people know you, especially you mentioned you have children. So my daughter, I have 3 kids now under 5. And that was part of the emotional, push towards getting out. But my daughter was like, what are you now, Dad? Like, she knew me as a dry cleaner. And now I have no identity. And it was hard telling her, well, do this thing like where we rent houses. I had trouble explaining to my daughter what I did. I think that it's very much different because I work alone and I work through partnerships, but I don't have staff. And so it's a very different world to where you don't get the instant satisfaction that you would from an identity standpoint, helping and serving your staff, your customers. But I'm starting to find it now because as I transition from the investing side and when I decided to make a business out of it, these were investments that I had made. They were low risk. I'm a low risk guy. And I'm now able to help other business owners do the same. So it was that I wish this person came to me 10 years ago and said, hey, you keep buying these rental properties, but you don't have any more time on your plate. What are you doing? Because I didn't even know that passive investing existed. It sounded like smoke and mirrors. And, there's all sorts of stuff online. You talked about like the silver tsunami earlier. Buying businesses is a hot buzzword and topic. And same thing like with passive investing, making all this money here and there. A lot of it's crap. So I was trying to like cut through it and say, all right, like, let me put me first. What investment is good for me? And then how can I help other business owners do that? So I have had fun, and I think I'm starting to reinvent myself, helping other business owners say, you need to have income outside your business. I think there's no better way to make a living through your business from a cash flow perspective, but long-term wealth accumulation and freedom of time comes from real estate. And that's what I want to help introduce to as many business owners as I can.
I love that, man. And I'll kind of tie this back to that identity thing, because we talk with business owners, and usually what I say is your whole life has been serving, right? Usually it's whatever clients you have and your family and whatever. You need to figure out who you're serving next. If you want to have a fulfilled life, I think fulfilled life comes from serving other people using your talents and gifts. Generally, when we're self-serving, that's when we're starting to get frustrated and, feeling selfish, et cetera. But when business owners can just say, oh yeah, now I'm serving my grandkids or my church or this nonprofit or whatever it is, then all of a sudden they're like, hey, my identity is the same thing. I'm this human being with these talents that is serving these people. A question that we love to ask our potential clients is, do you know what your business is worth? And if you sold your business today, would it fulfill your personal and financial goals? If you're a successful business owner, but you don't know when or how to sell your business, and if you've ever wondered what each additional day in your business is actually costing you, we'd love to chat. If you're ready to spend more time with your family, your friends, or traveling, come sit down with our team, because when you work with exceptional business advisors, we'll help you build a blueprint to sell your business successfully and help you create, capture, and achieve your dream life. Don't wait for the right time. The time's now. Go ahead and scan the QR code or book a discovery appointment at excoadvisors.com. So let's get back to RunSteady. What problem did you see in the marketplace? And you alluded to it a little bit, but define it a little bit more. But what problem did you see that you think RunSteady solves for your investors and for you?
So entrepreneurship is lonely, and investing can be too. And what I realized when I wanted to dedicate more time to be a passive investor, I had a difficult time in the beginning finding out who to partner up with or who to invest my money with. So I think RunSteady Investments was created as a whole to be able to solve the problem of, we're going to go at this together as a group. And I'm not some financial advisor or some guru that's telling you to do it, but then not having my own skin in the game. I think there's a lot of, credibility to saying, if I go put $200,000 into this investment, we are going to now do it as a group. And you can get involved and you can get involved. And for me, that was fun because it solves this issue of, how do you find these deals? A lot of times they're not open. These are private deals that the public doesn't really have access to. And B, I'm another layer of security behind the person that's running that deal because I'm not running the day-to-day. So our partnerships are all about how did they underwrite this real estate investment? And then I poke holes in it and figure out, were they being too aggressive here? Because from the business world, I talked about that. Trust was hard for me. And we ran our business from P&L. And so many of these opportunities you see now are these big returns in real estate, and people think you get rich in real estate fast, and I don't agree with that. I think that it's a long game, and you have to really be safe, because the number one rule is like not making money, but it's how do I not lose money? When I sold, I had worked so hard, and then here's your reward at closing. Now, it would be foolish of anybody to go and get aggressive with that lump sum of money to say, let's go double this money up. I was on the other end of the spectrum and thought, if I can make 8%, 9%, I'm really happy there, and I'm going to keep that because I don't want volatility. I've already built up my nest egg from running this business, selling the business. And so that is that missing component of what RunSteady solves. We get to co-invest as a group. People, they vet me, and they should. And just as I vet our partners, background checks are welcome. Anything, when I first got started, I started typing in people's names, and let's call them Bob Smith scam, Bob Smith fraud, like anything that you can do to try to get dirt on this person. But I'm now the extra layer to where I'm visiting these sites in person. I'm poking holes in their underwriting. I'm putting my own money into it first, and I'm investing in these relationships with operators that are already in the business and are excelling at it, all before it ever goes to our private network of announcing an opportunity to get involved. So that's been really cool, getting business owners that weren't real estate people involved in the passive investing space. Our last one, and we brought in, it was a small one, but there was 7 new business owners that had never been involved with any sort of like outside investments. So now we have, we speak the same language. We were both entrepreneurs for years, or the group. And so it was nice. Like, these aren't real estate people that are coming into these deals. These are entrepreneurs that have their plates full. We had a dentist, a surgeon, a veterinarian, people that own their own clinics. They're coming into these deals, a restaurant owner. So these are the types of people that I like helping now, and saying, hey, let me be the advocate for you. Let me do the communication. And on top of that, you're going to get a little bit safer because my own skin's in the game. I'm not going to risk $200,000 on something if I don't feel confident about it first for my own, investment criteria. So that's what that issue, what the company solves.
I had on my podcast a buddy of mine named Pat Zingarella. I'll send you the podcast because he created a software really to help vet GPs. We've had so many bad experiences with people calling us, and so we invest in oil and gas, real estate, and we buy businesses. And we have tons of people that'll call me all the time and say, hey, there's this oil and gas opportunity or real estate opportunity. And 9 times out of 10, the GP is not equipped to handle the opportunity that they're doing. And if you do look backs, like there was during COVID, everyone was like, hey, every 25-year-old finance bro was like, I'm buying apartment complexes, or I'm buying, storage units. And hey, we want you to invest in. I call them and I'd be like, hey, have you ever run a business? Because this is a business. Have you ever run a model where it goes really badly, where your rent rates aren't able to stabilize and grow the way you want to, and your team all quits on you and the processes fail? And it's like, well, no, it's a finance model, and our model says it's going to do this. And so we've been very unapologetically trying to say, hey, social media, there's a lot of BS on there. And most folks that are operators are not that good. So you've got to vet them. And one of the number one things that you said, if they don't have a big chunk of skin in the game and a background of having done this specific thing, not just, hey, I did single family for forever and now I'm going to go buy this $100 million property, that jump is too big. And what we're finding is a lot of those GPs now are failing. They also didn't understand their debt. And so debt has reframed a lot of things now, where you had interest rates that were fixed for a while and now they're floating. And all of a sudden, rent rates came down, or you had the government intervene, which I hate. And then all these people get smoked, and they're in this 5 years, and they're like, yeah, we're probably not even going to break even. Well, all those investors 5 years ago were so excited to be in there. So I think I love what you're doing, and I always encourage people, go slow. Like you said, don't lose a dollar. All your dollars are post-tax. So you only got 70 cents out of all the money you made, and now you have 70 cents. And if you go lose that dollar, it just takes you so much longer to rebuild those dollars, whether it be 1,000 or 100,000 or $1 million. So don't lose money and find good operators. But let's talk a little bit. I love bringing this up because I want to be more vocal about this. What are some of the myths in social media? And you said a few of them, which is, hey, getting rich quick, that's a myth. There are certain arbitrages that if you're lucky, if you got into cryptocurrency early and you found the right thing, if you got into some technology early and you found the right thing, but most people, 99.9%, for a long ways, decimal, are not going to be able to do that. So let's talk about social media myths that you've seen that you're trying to dispel personally and in your business model.
So I love that you asked this question because a lot of times social media has done a lot of good for some people and a lot of damage for people misconstruing what is real. One of them in real estate specifically are these massive returns to where people are going to double up their money. You mentioned earlier, it's a slow game. And if you invest in real estate, oil and gas, and businesses, you know this too. At the end of the day, businesses run with teams and P&Ls, and it's real life stuff you can touch and feel. So social media has changed the game to where they will offer you drop shipping stores or ways to, arbitrage to double up your money. I would just be really cautious when you do that. Now I'm in the business of raising capital. We pull together money and invest into deals. And I get pitched deals all the time. And, all the time you have to say no. And some of them, you look at it and you're wondering, you're scratching your head, how can they possibly give you these returns? And a lot of it, again, is because most people stop after looking at the pro forma or the investment deck. And they're like, damn, I'm going to get 16% a year on my money. And the sophisticated investor says, hold that thought. If you're going to get 16%, there's something going on that has to work perfectly, or we don't know how you're getting that, because most people don't expect that kind of return. Same to your point, Chris, with oil and gas. I don't particularly know the oil and gas industry well. It's not my thing. I've always done real estate and running my small business. So that's something that, if you were to educate people, like you said, your friend has a software company about vetting GPs or checking these people that are popping up and raising money, you really want to be cautious that that's the person that you want to park your funds with, because do you like them? Do they feel sleazy? Do you talk to them and then in your gut think that's a good return, but I just don't know about this guy? Do not invest with that person. That's just the number one thing. It all goes back to it's cool making a return, but it's much cooler not losing your money. And so to your point, you really want to make sure that you're working with the right people and figuring out, is this the safe partner that I need? Because now you've seen it with businesses and opportunities where you can invest into things. Every real estate investment or oil and gas or small business that you park money into, it's running a business and it counts on people. And you mentioned the 25-year-old earlier that points to the finance model. All that stuff is crap. You need to know who's running the show today and that they'll be there tomorrow. And you're partnering with somebody that you have to really know is going to be there for that, because stuff will go wrong and things will fail. And you need to know that this person's going to be in the trenches with you for the future of that partnership, because it is a partnership. You're bringing money as a silent investor, but there are expectations and roles established, because passive investing doesn't mean it's passive for everybody. Somebody is very, very active behind the scenes, and you have to trust that person's working in your best interest.
I love that. So a mental model that I want to share with our audience that I just came up with this year is, if somebody hasn't done something really hard for 10 years, I'm probably not going to work with them. Like you saying, hey, I've been in the dry cleaning business for 14 years. What that tells me is you've had a lot of really bad days and you still showed up and you made it successful. That's the type of person that I'm like, hey, let's talk about how we work together, how we build something together. If somebody's done something for 3-4 years and then they jump to something else, I'm at least really deeply considering why. Right? Because you can do something for 2 or 3 years and it sucks and you're like, all right, we'll just tough it out. But to do something 10 years, knowing it's going to be really, really tough, there are very few people in the entire world that can do that. And so when somebody sits down to me, oil and gas is a great example. We've been in it now for, almost 15 years. And the folks that are on our development team on our upstream oil and gas company, we've said, hey, we want to do this for the next 50 years until we die. We just love what we're doing. We're not trying to, most of these guys are like, hey, we're going to go raise $300 million of private equity capital. We're going to exit in 3 years, and then we're going to be passive and we're going to buy a yacht. That's not what I've ever done. I want to be in the game. I want to be a 90-year-old person that's still talking about deals, still focused on the family, but still in the game. And those are the kind of people that when you get with them, if something goes wrong, they will make it right. They're going to figure out a way to make it right. Whether it's like, hey, guys, we got to stay in this a little longer. We shouldn't exit now. This is not the right time. But the guys that have been like, hey, guys and gals, 3 to 5 years, we got to exit. They're going to be the ones that are like, hey, we're going to sell it at a loss. I know it kind of sucks, but, I got this other fund that I'm raising and I want to go do this thing. So that's a mental model that I always suggest. Just ask somebody, hey, past 10 years, what have you been doing? And if it's kind of all over the place or, hey, we sold this, it didn't really go that great, really dig in. Let me ask you another question. What have you loved most about getting to work with so many investors and just so many cool people, right? The business owners and some people that have owned real estate, some that haven't. What have you loved most about that?
It's been fun, number one, helping people that didn't know it existed. Because when I started it, I looked back and said, what would have helped me 10 years back? So that component of it and getting people involved has been a lot of fun because a lot of entrepreneurs are focused on tangible things that they can control within their business. And so I think real estate is like an easy and helpful path that kind of is similar to what they're used to doing. So it's been really fun helping them, teaching them about the tax benefits of it, and then really just opening up the mind to your point, like you're not going to get rich on one passive real estate investment, but it's the mindset of taking repetitive steps over and over that are calculated and you're controlling your risk. And if you stick to that process for 10 years, 50 years, whatever your horizon is, really good things will come from it. So I have fun getting people that have never thought about getting involved and talking to them about their business and what their goals are, because they need to, again, set something up outside of their business. You could get in a car accident tomorrow, and if you are a solopreneur or your whole shop depends on you, then number one, it kind of becomes worthless if you haven't set it up. It won't be bought. It could fail. So all of these things that people take, and the people thinking about investing outside their business, they're also the ones though that are thinking about that. How can I set myself up for the future? Because you want to be able to walk away the day you're ready to walk away and not feel like you're constrained to, I need to be, here longer. I know in your business, one of the best things that I like is, the ability. So I talked to Caleb about this, and it's the ability to help people in advance from like a consulting position of,
for sure,
what are you going to do after you sell your business? What's your identity? How will you make money? These are questions that sometimes people don't think about. And if you reframe the way that somebody thinks, then you're really putting them in a better position for a more successful exit, for a happier post-exit life. And then really, my favorite thing about that, and I'm sure you guys coach this, is whatever multiple somebody's trying to seek on their business, getting them to think about, well, if I want to obtain a 4x multiple of EBITDA, every dollar that I spend needs to be necessary because every dollar costs me $4 of valuation. And if you go in thinking like from a mindset perspective, I'm going to be selling my business in 2 years, let's start doing this now. That was the biggest eye opener for me when I went through that whole process. Was if I could have run my business much better, much earlier by acting like I was going to sell. And so, I kind of blur the lines of we do real estate investing, but I love small business. If they're, you take a Venn diagram and you put the two together, that little center slot is going to be entrepreneurship and real estate. And that's kind of the sweet spot. It's why I like working with in particular business owners.
I love it. All right. So let's wrap up with a couple questions. Number one, where can people find you and interact with you professionally? And then share two things. One, a book, a tool, a resource, something that's really helped you in the past 6 months. And then number two is a bit of final wisdom that you would leave our audience with.
Okay. So first, how you can find me after this, there'll be some links in the show notes, and I'll throw in there. I built this passive investor cheat sheet. It's all the questions that you want to ask somebody before you're ready to invest with them. So I would encourage people not to invest into anything until they've read it. I wish I would have had it earlier, so we'll have that there. You can visit my website. It's RunSteadyInvestments.com. And I'm also relatively active on LinkedIn, so I would love to connect on there as well. And to your next question about a book, or it was a book, right?
Yeah, a book, a podcast, a tool, a resource, something that you're like, this has just been incredible.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Two things. From a podcast, there's a podcast called Founders. It's by a guy named David Senra. Founders is good. It's not teaching you any business models or anything like that, but it's getting your mind right. And it's teaching you what all of history's greatest entrepreneurs did. And there's a lot of good takeaways. Mine was you need to be obsessive over controlling the cost. It is something, your expenses are something that you can control much more than your revenue. And so very good to kind of get your mind in the right space to run your business. And from a book perspective, probably ones you've heard of. I like Who Not How by Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan. Yep.
Yeah, that one is good because so many of us think, well, I can do this. I'm going to do it the best. And that was, again, what burnt me out was thinking that I was the person that would be doing it. I also like a book called Buy Back Your Time. It makes you think through the lens of what is your time worth and what else could you be doing with it. And so I think, if you're nearing burnout or nearing retirement, it's a good thing or for anybody to read and really put things in perspective. You asked a question about wisdom. Small business is hard, and you've worked really hard at your trade and your career, and you deserve to be compensated for it. Along the way, you're going to get a lot of people that are giving you advice. So be careful who you take advice from. Make sure that they've done it or in some capacity. It doesn't have to be the exact same industry as you, but you want to make sure that they're credible enough to give you that advice. I'll share a quick story. We were in a position where we had a lot of customer service reps, and the dry cleaning industry as a whole isn't the highest paying jobs. People can go make more elsewhere. So you had to be a good leader and you had to be cautious on your wages. Somebody once told me, they said, you're so cheap. You need to pay, everyone needs $1 more and do it on the next on the next payroll. So I did the math out of curiosity, and $1 more per hour at the time, this is 90 employees, I'm using 40 hours a work week. $1 was like $187,000 annualized. So you can this goes back to controlling your expenses, because that is an expense, and I'd love to give everybody $10 more, but it's not the reality of business, and you have to figure out how you can walk that tightrope. So really, don't jump into any decisions. Make sure it's calculated. There's math behind all this. You all know this, you're entrepreneurs, and just be cautious who you take advice from.
I love it. Ian, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for all the wisdom, and we'll look forward to catching up down the road.
Great. Thank you for having me.
For sure. Take care.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Exceptional Companies Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you liked this show, please reach out through our website, www.excoadvisors.com, for free tools to order a copy of Selling Main Street, or to sign up for our free webinar on how to sell your Main Street business.